Hello friends, what's up? It's Jaime here. Welcome back to another Fangirl Fridays video. These are the videos where I make all of my favorite things everyone else's problem. I've gotta say, I must be a fucking masochist or something because between Jujutsu Kaisen and Arcane, I keep gravitating towards shows that have deeply and irrevocably traumatized me because I just enjoy being in pain, I guess. I've already made a video talking about Jujutsu Kaisen, and so today we are talking about Arcane. Back when I first came back to YouTube after my 3-year hiatus, I made a Fangirl Fridays video where I talked about Arcane and Kanto and showed off some of my Animal Crossing amiibo cards, but because I was talking about several topics in that video, I didn't really get to discuss Arcane in detail. Also, I watched that video back recently and it's really funny to me, one, because that video is really bad, please don't watch it, but it's really funny because so many of my feelings about certain characters have like dramatically changed with season 2. So I think this is going to be fun to kind of like compare how I felt about certain characters then as to now. And also, I simply need to discuss Arcane because no one in my circle has watched it. I will get Adam to watch it eventually, mark my words. But in the meantime, I will be subjecting you guys to my rambles as per usual. So first, I'm going to talk about the music and animation of Arcane because obviously. Then I'm gonna go character by character, talk about their storylines, how my feelings about those characters might have changed or stayed the same between seasons. I'm not gonna talk about every single character or even every single major character. I'm only talking about the ones that I particularly had something to say about. It should go without saying that I will be discussing spoilers in this video, so if you are not caught up with Arcane, I would do so before proceeding. This is your one and only spoiler warning. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. I feel like I keep saying this, or I've just made a lot of videos recently where this has been something that continues to come up, but I've always had a bit of a weird relationship with music. I have grown up with a love of performing music. I still love to perform. I just haven't had as many opportunities since middle school and high school and whatnot. I grew up doing a lot of solo competitions where I would perform music and sight read and get evaluated by judges. I've also done a lot of group competitions growing up. I was and still am a major theater kid, theater lover. I did every single musical that I could in middle school and high school. So I do love music. I love performing. But it really wasn't until I got my car that I began actively listening to music because I just don't go out of my way to really listen to music outside of the car. If it weren't for my car, I'd rarely listen to the music that I love, with the exception of very particular situations. All of this is to say that despite loving music, I wouldn't consider myself a music person, if that makes sense. Like, I turn down the music for pretty much every video game I play, and I can infamously never recall the music that is playing during most of the things that I watch. It's like I just completely tune it out. It doesn't matter how many times I might have watched an episode of a show or an anime with like the opening or like what you just play that for me, like that song, like in everyday life, and I'm like, oh, what song is that? And like Adam, for example, will be like, that's like a song from like Naruto or something. And I'm like, oh, really? I didn't even know that. Even though I've like probably technically heard that song like a million times. So when there is music from a video game or a show that really sticks out to me that I actively play the soundtrack in my car, that's a really big deal for me. And that's how it is for Arcane, namely and really only for season 2. I could not tell you a single song that played in season 1, but they really went so hard with the season 2 soundtrack. It's insane. Heavy as the Crown, Isha's song, Wasteland, the French song that I don't know how to pronounce, but the one that plays during the Echo Powder dance scene, you know what I'm talking about. And of course, my personal favorite, the opening theme, Enemy. So I guess I lied. Technically, that's the one song that I do know from Arcane season 1, but that's my favorite song of the entire Arcane soundtrack. Though my personal favorite rendition of it isn't the one from the show. It's the Anna Pantsu cover of it. If you have not listened to that version of the song, go do yourself a favor, thank me later. And those are just like my personal favorites. I also really do like Paint the Town Blue, Fantastic, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Also, the Abbott Elementary Arcane crossover of having Cheryl Lee Ralph on the soundtrack was not something that I had on my bingo card, but I absolutely loved it. Next, of course, we've got to talk about the animation. I will keep this brief because I'm not an artist or an animator. I don't have like the technical knowledge of animation, so I'm sure that everything that I'm about to say has already been said so many times over, but holy shit, man, what an incredible fucking show for so many reasons, especially when we get to the characters, which we will get to later, but especially for the just absolutely stunning visuals. I am a lifelong animation lover. I will never understand people who turn up their noses at animation acting like it's a lower art form or like they are too good to watch anything that's animated. A person I went to college with who was in my major once said that she didn't like animation because she felt like it was too limiting, and all I could think about when she said that was she must have not seen Arcane or the Spider-Verse movies or literally any animated project ever because, huh? Arcane has some of the most jaw dropping, mind numbingly gorgeous animation I have ever seen. And if you think that that's limiting, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. I said this in my tier list video that I did of everything that I watched in 2024, but someone needs to get on opening a like dedicated Arcane museum because every single still from this show looks like a fucking masterpiece. I desperately need the Arcane art book because I simply need to hold those absolute gems of character and set design in my hands. I wish I had a more eloquent or advanced way of describing Arcane's animation and gushing over it besides that it's just so beautiful, but I don't. It's just so beautiful and distinct and vibrant, and I could stare at every single individual still for forever. Alright, we are moving on to the characters now. I'm sorry in advance if I don't talk about your faves. Again, I'm really only talking about characters that I personally have strong feelings about and have things to say about. If you want my opinions on characters that I don't mention in today's video, you can totally ask me in the comments. I'd be happy to engage. Okay, starting with one of my personal faves, Mel Medarda, my favorite capitalist who might not be a capitalist anymore, but also might still be a capitalist. The thing about Mel is that for the majority of season 1, I didn't know if I liked her or not, because the things that she did in season 1 were obviously motivated by her desire to establish a legacy through accumulating a substantial amount of wealth, but she also clearly had morals with Hextech and like how it should be used and what lines not to cross. But you could also make the case that perhaps those morals were less about actual morality and Mel was still motivated by money, because you could argue that, a war with Zahn, for example, would be very costly, wouldn't be profitable, and that it was less about actually saving lives in both Piltover and Zahn. However, I'm not sure if I believe that personally, and maybe this is me just being naive and believing what I want to believe because I really like Mel, but I really do feel like because of how we see Mel interact with and her conflict with her mother, especially that flashback or those flashbacks that we get in season 1, that she does have a sort of moral code. Like Mel's not motivated by financial gain. She was willing to push the development of Hextech for that reason. She did manipulate Jace and Victor because she knew that they had struck gold with Hextech, but I do think that she did care about Jace and Victor, and once she sees just how destructive Hextech is and what that means for the fate of the world and humanity, she's like, yeah, we gotta pull the plug on this. We have to shut this shit down. I think both can be true at once. I really enjoy how complex Mel is. She's still very much like an enigma to me, not just with where her morals lie, but also with what her motivations are in season 2. Because in season 1, I feel like I can pretty confidently say that Mel is motivated by financial gain. In season 2, Mel wants to stop Ambessa, but is that all she wants? Is like what I was wondering and continue to wonder. Again, because money was the reason behind the majority of her actions in season 1, I guess what I'm just wondering is if Mel has put her goal of becoming the richest Medarda behind her. I mean, now she's the only Medarda, but you know what I mean. Because I feel like that could give us some indication of what is in store for her post Arcane. And I'm gonna say this the one time because I feel like it needs to be said that obviously the pacing of Arcane season 2 is the season's biggest flaw. It didn't make me not like the show. It did not ruin the show for me, but it was obviously very difficult to ignore, especially for a character like Mel and her story this season. We go through the Black Rose shit and the revelation that Mel is like this super powerful mage so fast this season. It pretty much flies by. I have though heard people say that Arcane is probably going to be considered Mel's origin story, and that most likely her story will be explored further in one of these spin-offs. I don't know if it's been confirmed that Mel is going to be featured in any of the spin-offs or just like in the spin-offs in general, but I hope that that's the case because I have so many questions about where Mel goes from here now that her mother's dead, Jace and Victor are gone. What does like she plan to do in Noxus? What's going to happen with the Black Rose? What are the extents of Mel's powers and how does she plan to use them now after having witnessed everything that happened with Hex Tech? Will that factor into how she goes about using her powers? There's just like so much that we don't know. So I really hope that this isn't the end of her story because I really like Mel and I want her to get a proper ending. There is a reason why I have changed the title of this video so many times in an effort to accurately capture the amount of emotional damage that this show has put me through. And the biggest reason for that is Ekko and Jinx this season. But we're going to start with Ekko, my absolute favorite character in the entire show. Ekko is one of the few Arcane characters that my feelings have stayed consistent about throughout the entire show. I have always loved his character, and if anything, I have only grown to like him more from season 1 to season 2. Ekko, he really is that guy. Like, this season, Jinx might be the one, who becomes like the symbol of the revolution, but it's Ekko who's really the face of the resistance. He has been providing community care through housing and medicine for the Undercity with the Firelights. He's an inventor. He uses his intellect and his creativity to directly oppose Piltover with how he has helped the people of Zaun, and he knows how to fuck people up, and it is fantastic. I love his character so much, and my heart hurt for him so much this season. Oh my god, because they put my boy through the ringer, the fucking ringer. This man, he could not catch a break. This kid has never gotten a break in his life. Like, Ekko perfectly embodies every young resistance leader that has had to grow up so fast to clean up the messes of adults who don't give a shit about whether they live or die, and it is just so heartbreaking. It never fails to be heartbreaking. Ekko lost his adoptive dad. He has spent his whole childhood fighting against systemic oppression. The only time that he was able to be just like an actual teenager was in an alternate universe that he could not stay in because he had to literally go back home to save the world. He had to save the fucking world, and just as he was finally like getting to start over with Jinx, he lost her. And you know what's funny? Back when I first watched Arcane season 1 and in the years waiting for season 2, I have seen so much fan art shipping Ekko and Jinx, and I was never against the ship. I didn't personally ship them, but I saw where people were coming from. But you know the thing that I always thought about, like, literally every time I saw Ekko and Jinx content, I was always like, I think that the only way that I could like actually see them as a couple is in an alternate universe. And then we get episode 7, like, way to make me eat my fucking words, bro. Holy shit. I went from feeling honestly pretty indifferent about Ekko and Jinx's relationship to literally losing my fucking mind, screaming, crying, throwing up from episode 7 onward with all of the Ekko and Jinx scenes. I know that the creators have said that they cut out a lot of Ekko and Jinx content for like the final cut of the show, and I, like any sane Arcane fan, am like, why? Why did you do that? Because if you were gonna make me fall in love with this pair and what could have been, you could have at least given me some more fucking time with them, you bitches. Oh my god. But even with like the limited time that we had to explore the Ekko Jinx relationship, everything about the scenes that we did get was so excellent. The dance, the kiss, and then Ekko being the one to get through to Jinx and talk her down when she was about to off herself. Like, oh my god, all those scenes hit me so hard for so many like different reasons, but also like the same reasons. Esther and Adrian from Crazy Stupid Podcast did a really good video about Arcane season 2, where in that video they talked about the significance of Ekko needing to experience the alternate timeline for him to realize that Jinx was a product of her circumstances and not something innate to Powder. Because throughout the story, Ekko was like, I mean, he wasn't the only one, but he was one of the ones who was like the most consistent, the most adamant that Jinx could not be saved, that she could not be redeemed. So then for him to be the one to who literally tells her that it isn't too late to start over, that it isn't too late to build something new, because she taught him that. Oh, that hit me so fucking hard. I simply have not recovered and will never recover. I cried. Oh, I cried like a baby. I cried so much. Oh my god. The arguably even more significant and important reason for why Ekko needed to experience that alternate timeline was for him to remember to not just prioritize temporary fixes. Like I said before, Ekko is the one who has been actively resisting Piltover's oppression of Zon. He has done a lot of really valuable work for his community, but then he gets stuck on saving the tree, which is not important, but ultimately, if you don't deal with that bigger structural problem of how Piltover treats Zon, you can't build like a solid foundation to fix the structural problems of Zon, which was an essential reminder and lesson for Ekko. The last thing I want to touch on in regards to Ekko is about the ending of his storyline. So I watched a video on Instagram by Fantastic Frankey, that's her handle. She's made a lot of great Arcane videos, but one of the ones that really stuck out to me is when she talked about how she didn't really care for how much weight like the story gave Ekko and Jinx's relationship. I'm paraphrasing here, very much paraphrasing here, but basically she said that Ekko's final scene in the show should have been him being celebrated by his community for having just saved the world instead of mourning Jinx alone. And I totally get where Frankey is coming from. I can understand why it would feel like that scene wasn't earned, which I think is less about how Ekko and Jinx's relationship was written and more of a pacing issue. I don't think that anyone would argue that Ekko cared about Jinx, but I can see how people would question why he mourned her so deeply at the end. The thing about Ekko is that he always puts everyone else's needs before his own. He is a very selfless person. Everything that he has ever done in the story has been for his people, trying to do right by Zon, sacrificing his happiness for the sake of the world. It's why he is so determined to return to his original timeline. And so while I absolutely agree that Ekko's final scene should have been him being celebrated because he's my favorite character and I love him so much and he deserves the world, I understood the final scene that we got because to me, I saw it as Ekko finally getting to do something that was just for himself. I have absolutely no doubt that after the events of the story that Ekko has gone right back to being surrounded by and taking care of his community, that they probably were celebrating him because that is who Ekko is at his core. But I also think that this was something that he needed to do for himself to privately grieve a person that he loved. And regardless of whether you personally ship Ekko and Jinx or not, I think that what, like I mentioned before, what Esther and Adrian covered, that because Ekko was reminded of who Powder was at her core, he was then able to reestablish his connection with Jinx. Like, I really do believe that that love was always there after watching Act 3 of Season 2, but because so much had happened, because Ekko was so convinced that Jinx was like something inevitable about her as a person and not a product of her circumstances, the majority of those feelings got pushed down, got pushed to the wayside. They flickered through a bit during their big fight in season 1 on the bridge, but it wasn't until this season that they were able to really, that they were allowed to resurface. That Ekko allowed them to resurface because he gained this new understanding. So that final scene, although not the ending that I wanted for Ekko, again, because I love him, and I totally agree that I would have loved to have seen a scene of him being celebrated by his community. It did make sense to me, but it also still didn't broke my heart. In case you're wondering, I'm still recovering, and no, I don't think I will ever recover. I just wanted so much better in general for my boy, my favorite character. Also, I have to shout out Reed Shannon. Your performance as Ekko was so perfect and impeccable and phenomenal, and literally, oh my god, just bringing to life such an incredible character. Holy shit, what an incredible performance. And of course, the emotional damage continues with Jinx, my poor girl. Jinx is such a tragic character from beginning to end. I've always liked her. She was never my favorite character in season 1, but I did like her. But it really wasn't until rewatching season 1 and watching season 2 that I was able to fully grasp the scope of how tragic her story is, and it allowed me to reevaluate her character. And because I was really able to re-examine her character in season 1, and I grew to love her so much in season 2, the devastation that they then hit me with in season 2 was just amplified tenfold. The tragedy of Jinx really stems from the fact that she is a product of her circumstances, like we talked about in Ekko's section, and that if she had been able to grow up in a different environment, the majority of all the terrible shit that she went through throughout the story probably would not have happened. She was extremely intelligent, extremely gifted as an inventor, but because she grew up in an environment where she wasn't able to properly thrive and cultivate those talents in healthy ways, she continued to suffer again and again, especially because she perceived her lack of physical strength as a personal failing, a type of inadequacy, which is why episode 7 is a special kind of devastating, because we really got to see what could have been, what could have happened if Jinx had grown up in a more stable environment. Not a perfect one because her sister's dead, but one that allowed her to flourish, to cultivate her talents in ways that were productive and not destructive. A world where she is celebrated for her ingenuity and creativity instead of being made to view herself as a failure who is only good for causing chaos and destruction. And that just absolutely tore me up inside. By the way, all of this isn't to say that Jinx is exempt from accountability for her actions as a young adult, like with the terrorist attack on the council, and the fact that if she had turned herself in, Zaun would have gained its independence. But you can't ignore all the ways in which she was a victim of the system. Jinx is a monster of Piltover's making, and it's devastating to see how all of this could have been avoided. But I also very much understand Jinx's actions throughout the story, because she has never been a revolutionary. She has never fought for anything other than herself, other than just doing things because she causing chaos because she thinks it's fun. She becomes this symbol of the revolution, but she has never fought for political reasons. Her reasons for fighting have always been very personal. So even if I didn't agree with her actions at time, I really understood why she did the things that she did. But part of why I really grew to love her so much this season is I feel like this season was kind of like her redemption arc in a way. It's a redemption arc that she kind of stumbled into, but I think that there is some redemption nonetheless, because Jinx, she didn't choose to become a symbol for the people of Zaun. She didn't seek out someone like Isha. These weren't things that she planned for or aspired to do, but once she was in those positions, she broke those people out of Stillwater. She took Isha under her wing and cared for her and protected her. She was able to bring her family back together even if only for a short time, because she didn't give up on Vander still being in there, because she herself had been shown through how the people of Zon received her and her relationship with Isha that she could do things right, that she wasn't just doomed to destroy everything in her life, which made Isha's death even more heartbreaking, because the moment that Jinx was really beginning to understand all those things, she lost Isha. And besides the fact that she loved Isha like a little sister, and that on its own would have made this a devastating loss, but the fact that Isha died essentially protecting her probably only reaffirmed to Jinx that she couldn't do anything right, that she couldn't protect this one person that she cared about. And oh my god, that scene, I was crying. I was an absolute wreck. I was sobbing like a fucking baby. I cried even more when Ekko was talking her down when she was trying to off herself, because obviously the fact that Jinx thought so little of herself that she felt like the world would be better off if she was dead was already enough to rip my heart to shreds. But like what I said in Ekko's section, the fact that Ekko, who was the big, like one of the biggest advocates for Jinx being a lost cause, that there was absolutely no way to redeem her, and so then for him to be the one who helped her to see that it wasn't too late for her to start over, that actually, that shattered me. I'm still recovering, and I don't think I will ever fully recover from that. Even though her status is unknown, I choose to believe that she survived that final fight with Warwick, because I think that after her talk with Ekko, Jinx was able to see that she deserved to be happy too, and that she could start over. So I am choosing to believe that she just went off somewhere new for a fresh start, clean slate. It's what I hope for her. Ella Purnell gave the fucking performance of a lifetime as Jinx. It makes perfect sense to me that they spent years trying to find the perfect voice actress, and they found her in Ella. She really made the character of Jinx her own, and I cannot imagine anyone else in the world playing this incredible character as well as she did. I don't think that there's a single character in Arcane who has me more conflicted about my feelings than Vi, because I loved Vi in season 1. Absolutely loved her. She was my favorite character. I was super invested in the Caitlyn Vi ship. I loved Vi. But after watching season 2, so much of that has changed. Like, literally, so much. I think that obviously a huge part of it is Vi's actions in season 2, but a lot of it also has to do with me getting older, and my understanding of politics, both in the show and then in real life, have deepened and changed. I feel like a lot of the illusion of who I thought Vi was as a person, or wanted her to be, was shattered this season. And this really breaks my heart, because again, and I feel like I will continue to repeat myself throughout this, I really loved Vi so much in season 1. And I want to be very clear that I don't believe that she went through a character assassination in season 2, but it was just that when push came to shove, Vi's true colors were revealed. True colors that, upon rewatching season 1, I now realize were there all along, but I ignored initially, because from the beginning, Vi has never been a revolutionary, which that is something that I've always known. She has always been motivated by her desire for revenge against the people who have wronged her, and less about seeking justice for her people. Of course, she went after Silco in season 1. She teamed up with Jace to dismantle Silco's shimmer factories, but she was ultimately motivated by her desire for revenge. She didn't care that a literal child died when she and Jace stormed the factory, because all she really wanted was to get Silco, to hit him where it hurts. But I was rooting for Vi so much in season 1, because besides revenge, her biggest motivation was always been about getting her sister back, getting Powder back, that she would literally do anything for her sister. And I was okay with that, because I never looked at Vi as this pillar of morality. The fact that she was willing to team up with Jace and use Hex Tech shows that she has never been above aligning herself with Piltover, her oppressors, in order to get what she wants. Vi has never been motivated by politics, but the problem is that in season 2, Vi's no longer just morally gray. She jumps on the fascist ship with Caitlyn so quickly. I recognize that she probably felt betrayed after Jinx's terrorist attack at the end of season 1. I do believe that she feels that, or that she felt unanchored now that she could not fight for Powder anymore because Jinx had literally just done a terrorist attack. And I do believe that she felt responsible for Powder becoming Jinx. So you could argue that aligning herself with the Enforcers might have felt like a means of atonement for that, but any kind of moral compass Vi might have had gets completely thrown out the window the moment she puts on the uniform of the people who killed her parents and let her rot in prison and starts poisoning the air supply of her people. Like, season 2 really illuminates how little Vi cares about the people of Zaun, which we saw bits of in season 1, again with the child that Jace accidentally killed, and her getting mad at the Piltover Council for them not wanting to send swarms of enforcers down to Zaun, which ultimately would have disproportionately hurt the regular people of Zaun who are already hurting because of Piltover. Vi did not hesitate to put on that uniform. She would rather side with her oppressors than her own people. In season 2, she is much more concerned about the harm that has been done to the people of Piltover, who, yes, have suffered, but who have the resources to recover, than the people in Zaun. Vi's relationship with Caitlyn removed her from the danger that sending enforcers into Zaun meant for those people. She was so quick to turn her back on so many people. For what? Because of their connection to Silco, their connection to Jinx? Did she just consider them all like, oh, they're all a lost cause? Like, however she might have tried to justify to herself, she disregarded so many innocent people like they were nothing, which absolutely disgusted me. It's just sad because I still felt so much for Vi this season. The sequence of her drinking herself to sleep and then fighting in the pit and then drinking herself to sleep and then just repeating that cycle over and over again, that was so fucking dark and sad. My heart really broke for her. Getting Vander and her sister back only to have to go through the pain of losing both of them again was fucking sad. I cried for her. It really did hurt me for her. And that's the thing, right? Like, even though Vi has really fallen from grace for me, I still have a lot of love for her. I really can't look at her the same after this season, but I will always hold a sort of complicated love for her. Also, I've got to give props to Haley Steinfeld for an incredible performance as Vi, as always. I hope the Vi stands don't come after me. I realize that it's probably an unpopular opinion, but it's just like the moment that Vi went from like just being like the anti-hero to like cozying up with the fascists, I couldn't like, again, I could not look at her the same anymore. I think I will always still have like a bit of a soft spot for her, but just like overall, like I'm just like, ugh, just sad. Though I will say I feel a lot less conflicted about Caitlyn than I do Vi, which I really liked Caitlyn too in season 1. She was my favorite character after Vi, but like with Vi, this past season has completely changed the way that I see Caitlyn. I think myself and Vi, if I'm being honest, wanted to believe that Caitlyn had more capacity for empathy and compassion for the people of Zaun, that she like really cared about them, and that she was able to have more introspection to recognize the privilege of her Piltover upbringing than she actually did. And this season proves it. Caitlyn never actually saw the full reality of Piltover's oppression of Zaun. I can concede that she might not have outright hated the people of Zaun as a whole, but I don't think that she ever saw them as fully human either. I mean, she literally called Vi and her people animals when Vi wouldn't let her kill Isha, a literal child, when Caitlyn was trying to go after Jinx. Like, that's obviously a very clear, like, verbal example of Caitlyn's prejudice, but this season is full of examples of it. She tokenizes Vi, treating her like one of the good ones from Zaun. Like, Vi has to constantly remind Caitlyn that It's like, I'm from the Undercity too. Like, we are not all the same. We are not all like violent criminals or anything. And of course, I do recognize that Caitlyn is grieving the loss of her mother and that she's feeling a lot of grief, rage, sadness. But it was so easy for her to leap into the arms of fascism after her mother's death. She manipulated the very system that her mother created to help the people of Zon literally breathe, to make their air down there in Zon breathable. Like, I do think that Caitlyn made efforts to try to understand the disparity between Piltover and Zon in season 1, but she never fully got there. She never fully got it. And any effort that she made in season 1 gets thrown out the window the moment that she gears up to gas the people of Zon, because she believes that the Zon terrorist attacks and using poison and the filtration system to literally help them breathe, the one that her mother created, that it's just like tit for tat. Like, oh my god, the similarities between Piltover's reaction to the Zon terrorist attacks, which were, besides the Jinx one, actually orchestrated by Ambessa, and Israel's reaction to October 7th are so incredibly, scarily similar. And that's really why I could not look at Vi and Caitlyn the same anymore. Acting like this is the beginning of a conflict, acting like this is the first act of harm that was done out of nowhere for no reason. Because even if these attacks the ones that were orchestrated by Ambessa, even if they hadn't been, to negate all of the systematic oppression that Zon has endured from Piltover is crazy to me. The second that Piltover got a taste of what everyday is like for the people of Zon, the kind of pain that they endure on the regular, that can be directly attributed to Piltover's actions and inaction, they said, time for fascism. Even though we saw in real time how quickly they were able to recover from those attacks. Obviously, the loss of life cannot be recovered. But just in general, being able to rebuild, the people who were injured but were able to receive care and cosmetic help and whatnot, we saw how easy it was, because they had the access to those resources, for them to overall recover from those attacks. So yes, even though we do see Caitlyn have some inner turmoil, inner conflict about how to handle the Zon situation, but it's in the end, she still chose to gas innocent people. That is not a small act. That's not just a little whoopsie. It was calculated, it was barbaric, and that's why I don't fuck with her anymore. I'm sorry to the Caitlyn stans. That's just how I feel. And finally, we have Heimerdinger, whose status is also currently a big old question mark, which is kind of, like the running theme, I feel like, of Arcane Season 2. Heimerdinger is another character that has me so torn throughout Arcane, because in a lot of ways, he is very charming. He's whimsical, a lover of science, a bit goofy, fluffy, very fluffy. And it's these qualities that have made it so difficult for me at times to be critical of Heimerdinger. But alas, none of these things erase the fact that Heimerdinger is one of the founders of Piltover. He has been on the council since the dawn of the city's creation, and yet it isn't until the events of season 1 of the show that he visits Zon for the first time. All this time, all these hundreds of years, you didn't think about actually helping these people when you helped to create these terrible conditions in the first place. And something else that Esther and Adrian pointed out in their review of season 1 that I hadn't considered until they said it, was that because of how long Heimerdinger has lived for, he lacks the urgency to solve problems. He's never actually offered any solutions, any concrete long-term actions to help the people of the Undercity. And you really see this lack of urgency with how Heimerdinger was in absolutely no rush to get back to their original timeline when him and Ekko were in the alternate timeline. He even went so far as to be like, what if we just stayed? What if we just didn't go home? Whereas that was something that would never have even occurred to Ekko. Ekko was immediately like, we have to go back. We just have to go back. So while I did enjoy the Ekko Heimerdinger mentor-student relationship, and while I do think that Heimerdinger did have some good moments of wisdom and insight about hex tech and the dangers of hex tech, but in the end, he was nowhere near being the pillar of morality that he presented himself as, or even that the show presented him as. And it breaks my heart because I also like have like a soft spot for him, but it's also like it's like you really fucked up, man. Like I don't know how like you just like I wanted you to be so much more than you were. Alright, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. While we wait for the Arcane spin-offs, and God only knows how long we're going to be waiting for those, I need something to fill the Arcane-shaped void in my heart. So if you guys have any recommendations for shows that you think that I would like as an Arcane fan, feel free to leave those down below in the comments. Would very much appreciate those. Whether it's Western animation, anime, I'm not particularly picky. Also, if you are looking for more Arcane content, I would highly recommend Friendly Space Ninjas video, and also the videos that Esther and Adrian have done over at Crazy Stupid Podcast, as well as I don't know how to link like individual videos, but I'll have Fantastic Frankie's Instagram link down below in the description as well. Particularly for Esther and Adrian and Frankie, their videos really talk more about like how Arcane tackles fascism and revolution and wealth inequality and class. So highly recommend those videos. Once again, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I upload Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, except when I don't. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.